Let's talk about this even further. Joining us now is Mariana Alfaro with the Washington Post. And Mariana, thanks so much for being with us. I was struck by one line in there, in that video. She says, this is who she's always been. I would imagine that some of her progressive friends might not agree with that line, maybe.
Yeah, that was the main thing we heard today. A lot of the people who worked on her campaign back, when she first got elected, were like, where is this coming from? This is not, the Senator Sinema that we campaigned for. But the truth is that she's really been very much her own person in the Senate. I think that, her vote was one that Democrats couldn't really count on all the time. She's very much, she has voted, I think, with President Biden's agenda 93% of the time. I think that was the one thing that we heard from the White House a lot today. But she very much has, slowed things down. She very much has, said, hey, I don't agree with everything that we're doing. And so progressives who helped her, gain this office were very shocked today. Maybe not fully shocked, but they were pretty shocked. But I don't think that we could see, Sinema being like the next big progressive name. I think that she decided not to be that a long time ago.
Mariana, speaking of those people who were shocked, maybe some journalists got this pitch email today with the subject line, anti-Sinema spokespeople available for interviews. So I thought that was interesting, and you were kind of likening to a lot of people who used to work for her, especially on the 2018 campaign. But let's talk about how this will affect Capitol Hill. It doesn't seem like many prominent Senate Democrats are too concerned about that. Chuck Schumer put out this statement today. He said, quote, Senator Sinema informed me of her decision to change her affiliation to independent. She asked me to keep her committee assignments, and I agreed. He says Kyrsten is independent. That's how she's always been. So she's keeping her committee assignments. Really the only thing, and maybe this is your view, that changes is the letter after her name, I, now not D.
Yeah, that's mainly the one thing. I think that the main shock was for Arizona Democrats. I think that for Capitol Hill purposes, it's going to kind of be the same thing. We already have two independents who caucus with Democrats. They're very much clearly, aligned with the agenda. I mean, mainly Bernie Sanders. He's just even more liberal than most of the Democrats in Senate. But I think for the purposes of the Senate majority, which is so thin, I think that Chuck Schumer is right in saying, she's pretty much going to stick around to most of the things that we believe in. But the thing is that she already wasn't, all sold out on like the Democratic agenda. She still, wasn't willing to end the filibuster, for example. Like she wasn't already all in. And so I think that doesn't really shake things up for Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah, and Mariana, you kind of name-checked there how the response is faring among Arizona Democrats. I have a statement from the state party chairman, Raquel Terán. They say, quote, Arizona Democrats pride ourselves in being a voice for all Arizonans. This election cycle, our Democratic candidates delivered wins up and down the ticket with a broad coalition of voters, including independents and Republicans. It goes on to say, however, Arizonans also need their voting rights protected and corporations to pay their fair share. Unfortunately, in those areas, Senator Sinema has fallen dramatically short, leaving Arizonans behind. And then, some members of the Arizona congressional delegation, some prominent Democrats like Ruben Gallego, put out this pretty scathing statement. He says, last month, the voters of Arizona made their voices heard loud and clear. They want leaders who put the people of Arizona first. We need senators who will put Arizonans ahead of big drug companies and Wall Street bankers, whether in the Marine Corps or in Congress. I have never backed down from fighting for Arizonans, and at a time when our nation needs leadership most, Arizona deserves a voice that won't back down in the face of struggle. Unfortunately, Senator Sinema is once again putting her own interests ahead of getting things done for Arizonans. Mariana, now a lot of people are talking about 2024. That's when she's up for re-election, and so maybe we'll see some of these people come out today with these statements vying to challenge her.
Yes, and 2024 was already looking really difficult for Democrats, and that's the play she's doing here. She already knew that if she remained in the caucus, possibly, they would try to primary her out. And, Ruben Gallegos is one of the main Democrats in the House from Arizona who's kind of, played with this idea that maybe he should be the next senator. And again, this year was very tough for Democrats in Arizona. They still won. It was a very much, difficult election still. Mark Kelly scraped through. And so it's not like if they have this seat secured. So her deciding to run as independent makes it kind of more of a complicated equation, math calculation for Democrats. in 2024. So the thing is, Gallego already put the statement out, but it's still 2 years away. Like Arizona Democrats are going to really have to come together and decide what they're going to do next, because they could also just easily open up a spot for Republicans in 2024 there.
Okay, more though, Arizona Democratic reaction. I want to put up this tweet by Congressman Greg Stanton with a kind of screenshot of their overall approval rating amongst Democrats in the state. And then he goes on to say, Sinema's decision isn't about a post-partisan epiphany. It's about political preservation. Her recent statewide primary polling must be the same as mine. So he's going after her, kind of saying he's more popular in the state. He could win if they were ever in a face-to-face head-off election there. So the knives are out for Kyrsten Sinema here in Arizona. But what does this mean? So if she were to run in 2024, presumably she's going to run for re-election, what would a primary contest look like if she is an independent? If there's a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent, 3 people vying for the same thing?
Yeah, and that's the thing, that they could very easily split the vote there between like moderates and Democrats. And we already saw, people still showed up for the Republican candidates in Arizona. They didn't win, but it was still a very close race. I'm talking, governor's race, Bart Kelly's race, like all these people. Carrie Lake, for example, she, is probably not going to get off the stage. She's still going to be trying to, be the next Republican force in the state. And so all these people could see an opening if, this situation between Democrats and Kyrsten Sinema isn't figured out. She could very much siphon away these votes from Democrats. So it's going to be, it's still 2 years away, and the tides have shifted a lot in Arizona in the last 2 years even. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely that calculation is going on in everyone's minds there right now.
Okay, and we got to just kind of set the historical precedent just lastly, because this has happened before. It hasn't happened in a while. For political reporters and junkies like yourself, I imagine it's an exciting day to cover something like this when this happens, because it's so rare. But I'm thinking Jim Jeffords, I'm thinking Joe Lieberman, and of course we have independents in the Senate already, Angus King of Maine and others. So.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. I did not wake up expecting this. I'll tell you that. And also the fact that it comes so close to the results of the Georgia race. I know that, we still don't know why. She won't say why she decided to pick this day to announce this. But again, Democrats have just secured the very slight majority in the Senate. The 51st vote, as I mentioned before in the show, makes a big difference. And so for her to come out with this today is definitely very historical. And again, a lot of references have been made to the Lieberman case, and I recommend everyone go read up on that. But it's just it's the kind of change that we don't feel in the Senate. We're not going to see, happen on the Hill that much. And the effect on the Hill is, again, not that great, just because she's been supporting Biden's agenda for so long, but it's still very significant.
Yeah, I guess I'll be watching in the next Congress if, she does break with Democrats on anything major. I mean, I guess that is what people will be watching for. Mariana, Alfaro, as always, we appreciate your insight, your reporting. Have a good weekend. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.